Peculiar accidents appeared to be a constant occurrence in Zephyrian space. Vessels would vanish without leaving any evidence, or sustain damage from apparently no cause. The flight data recorders consistently failed to reveal even a trace of anything on their sensors. It was certainly an odd phenomenon. The handful of witnesses who survived recounted increasingly incredible stories. In Novolith folklore, there were said to be guardian spirits, ghosts of those who had died unjustly and opted to remain behind to safeguard the innocent. They were reputed to be fierce in their righteous fury and naturally invisible to the living. The survivors circulated rumors that the Helios system was haunted by these spirits who would utterly destroy any wrongdoers who ventured to approach Earth. Several recurring themes frequently emerged in these tales. Reports of observing a faint shimmer in the emptiness of space or detecting an irate human voice through the communication systems were widespread. Their vessel would subsequently be either ripped apart from every angle or disabled and invaded by mysterious figures. Initially, the stories failed to persuade most individuals. The testimony of lawbreakers and commoners wasn't particularly trustworthy, particularly when they were making outlandish assertions. Everything shifted when our government dispatched 3 military surveillance vessels to investigate a possible invasion of Earth, and they simply disappeared. News of the unsuccessful operation spread to the media, and abruptly, those spectral tales gained much more believability among space travelers. Smugglers, traders, and slave ships alike started to steer clear of the Helios system, worried that they too might vanish. Opting for a longer route meant higher fuel costs, but it was preferable to being captured by the phantoms. I wasn't among the believers, however. Ghosts were not real, and religion was a sham, in my opinion. These stories must have been embellished, merely the product of trauma and overactive minds. After considering it, I figured that the Zephyrians had likely installed some kind of minefield within their systems. I presented my theory to the other generals. I proposed we move forward with the invasion and merely send drones ahead of our fleet to trigger any traps. Following a short deliberation, they all concurred with my strategy and chose me to lead the mission. It was my concept, after all. Deployment carried some risk to my life, but I was assured of the strategic counsel I had provided. If this succeeded, I would be acclaimed as a hero across the Empire. Subjugating an inhabited world was among the most significant accomplishments a general could achieve. Our fleet fanned out into an arc formation as we entered the Helios system, and everything appeared to be proceeding as planned. I was stationed on the command vessel at the back of the procession, transmitting orders to the skirmishers. We dispatched a swarm of drones to lead the way, and as expected, a series of explosions eliminated them. No ships besides our own were visible or detectable on radar. That must indicate I had been correct about the mines. If we went in now, before they had a chance to reactivate them, surely the path would be open. The idea that the ghost stories could be real fleetingly entered my thoughts. The blast that destroyed the drones had seemed unusually accurate for preset traps, but I swiftly scolded myself for such silliness. Ghosts were merely superstition. I commanded the fleet to proceed. There wasn't any indication of danger, only an unsettling quiet. Something seemed amiss about the situation, though I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. Abruptly, contact with the forward scouts was lost. Our instruments registered an energy surge indicative of an electromagnetic pulse, apparently coming from an unknown source. Plasma shots seared our vessels from both sides, eroding their outer armor and protective fields. Through the view screen, I observed the atmosphere escaping from multiple now-disabled ships, yet our assailants remained invisible. "Shoot them!" I barked at my weapons officer. "Shoot what?" he responded. "General, there aren't any hostiles showing up on the targeting system to engage." Anxiety welled up in my chest as I grasped that we had lost communication with most of our fleet within moments. The Dominion's most sophisticated warships had been eliminated so effortlessly by an unseen foe. I struggled to comprehend how this could happen, and otherworldly forces almost appeared to be the only reasonable explanation. I was about to command a retreat when a strong explosion shook the command ship suddenly. The lights flickered out and the artificial gravity ceased as the computer redirected all power to the shields. I sensed my feet lifting off the floor and attempted to grab onto the desk to anchor myself. Even at maximum defensive output, the shields were scarcely holding. Keep in mind, this was the Empire's flagship, engineered to withstand the direct impact of a nuclear missile. The sole thing that could breach our defenses would be sustained antimatter torpedo fire. However, antimatter weapons were quite uncommon to encounter on the battlefield, as they were incredibly difficult and costly to produce. What species would dedicate so much money and resources to armaments? It was impractical. Spirits, however, had no such monetary constraints. They might even be capable of conjuring cutting-edge phantom vessels at a moment's notice. It was beginning to make sense. I was finding it increasingly difficult to stay in denial. The shields failed, and the most recent antimatter barrage struck the engine room. Our assailants had known precisely where to target, disabling central power and our warp drive. Weapons, navigation, communications, all down. Only essential systems like life support remained operational, running on the emergency power generator. With shields no longer functioning, the generator also fed energy back to lighting and artificial gravity. I was already in motion when my feet hit the floor again, shouting to abandon ship. There were escape pods located in the hangar. Our ship was lost, but maybe a handful of us could launch away and call for assistance, or at the very least we could alert our command. Smoke trickled down from the upper decks as I rushed through a maze of winding corridors and tight stairwells. The evacuation path had not been well thought out. I suspected none of this vessel's designers ever imagined it would be necessary. Coughing, I stumbled into the hangar. A jarring, grinding noise filled the air as I entered. Sparks were flying from the airlock, carving faint orange lines into the metal. It appeared as though someone were attempting to create an entry point for boarding. I shuddered to imagine who that someone might be. I moved a few paces ahead, gesturing for my men to come along. Maybe if we rushed, we could escape before they entered. But any chance I had of reaching the escape pods vanished as the airlock collapsed inward. There was no breaching tunnel to maintain the ship's pressure, yet we were still able to breathe. All I could see were stars and an odd shimmering effect, as if reality itself had been changed. Silhouettes dressed entirely in black emerged through the opening. They appeared to materialize from nowhere, aiming their weapons in our direction. The overwhelming fear I experienced almost paralyzed me, but somehow I managed to recall how to move my limbs. I lifted my arms high above my head, every muscle in my body shaking. "We surrender. Please don't hurt us," I shouted. Well, I tried to shout at least. It came out as more of a whimper. The final thing I recall before losing consciousness was one of the dark figures coming closer and slipping a sack over my head. Colonel Marcus Hawthorne had dropped in for an update on the interrogation. A handful of officers were observing through a one-way mirror as intelligence personnel questioned the captured alien general. Thus far, they had gleaned a great deal of vital information about the Novalith Empire's military capabilities, strategies, and intentions from him. It was odd how compliant he was. He begged human interrogators not to damn his soul on several occasions, swearing he would reveal anything they wished to know. The groveling and the dramatics seemed unbecoming of an officer in any military. "This whimpering fellow is one of their top-ranking generals?" Collier Kelly inquired with a scornful tone. "What on earth is making him behave this way?" Lieutenant Ethan Blackwood grinned. "Well, sir, it seems the Xenos have no understanding of stealth technology. As our cloaked vessels were undetectable to them, they believed they were assaulted by phantoms." "Really? If that's true, we ought to send him back. Should he inform his pals about the ghosts, perhaps they'll cancel the invasion." The colonel rapped on the glass 2 times to indicate for the interrogators to leave the room. He entered the cell, observing the gray-skinned alien in his custody. The Novalith general shrank under his stare. "Well, it seems today is your fortunate day. We're going to release you to go home, with one condition," Collier Kelly stated. The alien looked at him earnestly. "I'll do anything. We've got a message for the Empire, and we'd like you to pass it on. Tell them, using these precise words, stay the fuck away from Earth. When had a Dominion general ever suffered a defeat in battle, much less lost an entire fleet? We possessed advanced technology in our arsenal and skilled strategists within our ranks. No one could match our military might, or so we had believed. So how had a group of primitive, squabbling apes managed to overcome us?" Several of the other generals were entertaining General Vexer's ghost tales, But as Emperor, I held the final decision. There were two more plausible explanations in my view, neither of which cast Vexor in a favorable light. Either he was completely inept and had been outmaneuvered by the monkeys without causing a single enemy loss, and was trying to cover his failures with absurd accounts, or he was a traitor who had colluded with the enemy and led the fleet into an ambush. Consequently, it was my ruling that he was to be executed for treason. I gathered the generals again, resolving to participate in the planning session this time. We would regroup and ensure the conquest of Earth was executed correctly on this occasion. I anticipated strategic proposals, but everyone remained silent. It appeared that none of them wished to volunteer for deployment by formulating a plan. That imbecile Vexor had influenced their thinking with his exaggerated stories. If I don't begin hearing some suggestions in the next few moments, I'm going to hang all of you up, I growled. General Tissem cleared her throat uneasily. My lord, what if we simply invade another planet? There are undoubtedly other worlds. I fail to understand why this particular one is so crucial. I shot her a glare. It's not that Earth itself matters. It's the signal we'd be sending to our other subjects by conceding defeat. The humans need to be subdued and shown our superiority. You're correct, Your Highness, she responded. What if we attempt to communicate with them? Request their surrender? If we're as dominant as you claim, there's no reason to expend any more resources on this. I tapped my fingers on the table, mulling over her suggestion. Certainly, we are the most formidable force in the galaxy. The humans will be trembling and pleading for mercy at the mere mention of our power. Establish communications. I'll address them personally. I looked at the view screen while our technicians set up communications with Zephyrian Command. A gray-haired human in uniform appeared on screen. His expression appeared somewhat smug, which I found quite displeasing. This was evidently no ethereal wraith. This was a genuine, physical being. I'm Colonel Kelly from the Zephyrian Space Force. I assume you received our transmission. A playful glint shone in the man's eyes. Appreciate the vessels, by the way. They'll be excellent additions to our salvage yards. I leapt to my feet, incensed by his jeering tone. You miserable humans will suffer greatly for your actions. Yield now, or confront the complete fury of the Empire. Colonel Kelly let out a sigh. You folks really want another go? Well, don't claim we didn't caution you. The human officer appeared more irritated than worried as he gestured something to the individuals behind him. I was finding it difficult to control my rage. Never had anyone been so dismissive of our forces before. Such insolence could not be allowed. After we subjugated their world, I would command that we demolish their main cities. The Empire had to make an example of these Zephyrian nuisances. You're just bluffing. If you were truly that confident, you would have retaliated by now, I replied. Colonel Kelly shrugged. Some folks want us to wipe you off the map, but most of us aren't keen on killing civilians. We simply needed time to consider the odds and determine the best way forward. And what is that exactly? You see, humanity simply desires to be left in peace, and it appears that the fastest way to achieve that is to get rid of you. Ha! You have the audacity to threaten the Emperor? My security fleet would annihilate you before you came within a parsec of this metropolis. Yes, your security fleet. Why didn't we think of that? I wasn't entirely certain about human voice inflection, but the previous query seemed sarcastic in tone. If this conversation was merely bluster, the colonel deserved a raise. His performance was excellent. A brief look around the room revealed that his casual attitude had further discomforted my generals, who had been eavesdropping. Although I was certain this individual was merely bluffing, I opted to review our intelligence on the Zephyrian armed forces nonetheless. It couldn't hurt to ready countermeasures in case they actually intended to strike our capital city. I flipped through the official dossier on Earth. There was remarkably little data available about them. Their government comprised a coalition of regional states, frequently rendered immobile by political discord. They had one extraplanetary colony, the fourth planet in their system, which only contained a few small settlements. None of that was especially impressive. However, we possessed no data regarding their military strength. This appeared inconceivable. The Zephyrians were either concealing their fleet, or those who had encountered it did not survive to recount the experience. Our sole eyewitness accounts came from pirates and now a disgraced general, alleging that phantom vessels prowled their star system. Maybe that was their strategy, to frighten us away with psychological tactics, gossip, and deception. The whole Zephyrian population was smaller than the number of drafted troops we had. No matter what armaments they owned, we could overpower them simply due to our vastly superior numbers. Impressive palace, by the way, Colonel Kelly commented, pulling me from my thoughts. At last, a remark that showed a degree of appreciation. The humans were capable of recognizing the value in some of the Empire's achievements, after all. I gave a faint smile. Thank you. It's quite an impressive piece of Novalith engineering. It's unfortunate you can only view this room. The outside is truly remarkable. You're incorrect. I'm able to view the exterior quite clearly. Glass ceilings, silver arches, numerous statues. I stood motionless. It seemed impossible that the humans could be familiar with the Grand Palace's appearance from prior encounters. No Zephyrian envoy had ever set foot in our sector. His choice of words also suggested he was observing the palace from above at this very instant. Yet not one intrusion alarm had been set off, nor had any patrol ship issued an alert. How could they have managed to bypass our defenses? Colonel Kelly laughed at my response. Glance upward, Emperor. We might simply finish you off right now, but I'd prefer your last view to be of our vessels. I looked up at the see-through ceiling. The only thing visible was the bare amber sky and sunlight streaming through the glass. However, this peaceful scene turned out to be an illusion. Countless fighters materialized suddenly, as if summoned by some sort of sorcery. Catching sight of the fleet suspended above the palace, I realized my end was near. Sirens at last blared as the Zephyrian vessels revealed themselves, and our leaders attempted to organize a defense. I understood it was futile. Their railguns were already charged and directed at our command center. Got any final words? The colonel inquired. Maybe you'll weep and beg for mercy like your general did. I don't think it'll help, but feel free to give it a shot. I gazed vacantly at the smug human officer. I inhaled deeply, sensing the air expand my lungs for one of the final times. Gathering my thoughts proved challenging, given the situation, but I had to keep my composure. I wouldn't allow the humans the pleasure of witnessing my fear. A dignified death was all I could aspire to now. The Emperor bows to nobody. My voice remained steady and even despite the fear running through my veins. I merely seek to understand how you accomplished this, to comprehend those who defeated us before I face my demise. Colonel Kelly's gaze darkened. Our secret? We become one with the shadows. Those were the final words I heard as a dazzling flash swept away my existence.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.